Hello and welcome to another episode of Jackman Radio. I'm riding solo tonight. It's your host, Eric Jackman, and I'm excited to have my friend and former colleague on the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. campaign, Mr. Jeff Hutt. He was the national field director for the campaign. Jeff, great to have you on, man.
Oh, it's great to be on. Really looking forward to rehashing some talk about our days on the campaign trail, some of the early days in the Kennedy campaign, like what's happened since then and where we're going from here. So thanks. Really pleasure to be on the show. And especially your audience too. Like you have an audience that I think is really important for our movement and be able to have this direct conversation with them. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, Jeff. And Jeff and I recently reconnected because he's one of the founding members now of a new Super Pac and spokesman. It's the MAHA PAC, Make America Healthy Again PAC. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what the goals are, why it was established, and really what we hope to do. I've joined the PAC as well as an advisor, full disclosure. These are guys I worked with on Kennedy's campaign. And it was, wow, what an experience, Jeff. It was quite an eclectic group of people from all across the political landscape that were part of this campaign. And I guess, just talk a little bit about how you came on board. When did you start, what the early days were like for you, and what were some of your takeaways from the campaign?
Well, I came on, Mr. Kennedy announced in April. And I started to try to get involved soon afterwards. And I think a lot like maybe you probably came on, it was interesting. Mr. Kennedy announced, and it was almost like when President Trump announced, you had folks who just naturally created these volunteer groups. And there was a couple of Slack groups that had started, and we got introduced into my friend and I, Andy, got introduced into the Slack group. And then we got introduced to a gentleman by the name of Ron Choi, who was set up Texas early. And Ron Choi is one of the best representatives of the movement. He was a super smart guy who understood data, who really helped us kick off Texas well. And then Dennis Kucinich actually hired Linda Curtis to be our first state director. Linda is known in Texas as the petition queen. That's her email. She is a big player in the independent political scheme. So I started to work with her. She left in September, and I took over as the Texas state director. And we had built out, her and I and Andy Griffith, we had built out a good team in Texas. It was large. It was growing. We had divided the state up. And we were gonna win the Democratic primary in Texas, and we had developed a strategy. We were ready to go, but that didn't happen. Then we switched over in October to being, the independent route. And in January 1st, Jared Volz, who is the CEO of Make America Healthy Again PAC, stepped down, and I took over as the national field director, not campaign director. Thank goodness. I'd never want that job. The national field director. And I was the national field director from that time until June 15th. And then I stepped down after the Libertarian Convention. And after it was announced that we weren't on the debate stage. I realized at that time that our window had closed, lawfare had picked up, and we needed to find another way sort of through, or how we were going to, like, what was going to happen with the movement that had created. And it really was a movement. I don't know what your experience was on the trail about the people that I met early on in Texas. A lot of them came to the campaign because of COVID. It was the one unifying factor, right? So right. Mr. Kennedy talked about freedom of speech. He talked about constitutional rights. He talked about, and then he had the medical freedom people, and he had the riverkeeper type people. So it was like this weird coalition that formed. But the one single thing that kind of, I think, united a lot of us was COVID, and was the response to COVID. But knowing that, we had this movement going, we needed to find a way forward. I came off the campaign trail, and during the Republican convention, I, like a lot of other people, maybe you too, I was texting Mr. Kennedy. I was like, Mr. Kennedy, now is your time. You need to leverage this and get behind President Trump. And I think a lot of other people were. And then we had this time period of uncertainty. And then when he announced he was going to back Mr. Trump, the former field staff, who no longer had a campaign, because he said, we're going to back Donald Trump, come off the campaign trail. We're not going to be running these states. The former campaign staff, we sort of huddled together and decided that the only way that we needed to get Donald Trump elected for Mr. Kennedy to be able to get his policies enacted. And there was some confusion in the messaging, but we were gonna go out, and we were gonna go to the voters that we had and the network that we had of supporters and be like, we need to vote for Donald Trump. Because I don't know how you felt, but I would hate for the Kennedy campaign to endorse Donald Trump and then for us not to win. And that is, so we're balls to the wall till November 5th, looking to do some media buys, promote rallies, voter turnout, really simple things to get people to make sure that that extra push to get over the hump.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a good listener, sir.
What's that?
You're a good listener.
Oh, hey, man. That's one of the keys to having a successful podcast. You want to learn from your guests and have them do the majority of the talking. Yeah. People already know where I'm coming from. Well, my audience does. But the campaign experiences is some of the most amazing and surreal experiences I had personally ever working for a campaign. I can really point it back to the day after he announced. My brother and I got the first long form podcast sit down with Bobby.
Oh, wow.
Up in Manchester, New Hampshire. So he announced on April 19th in Boston, and then April 20th, we sat down with him. No questions are off limits. Nothing was pre-screened. I mean, I wasn't working for him yet, of course, but I'd been going back and forth with some people around him to get the interview. And actually, the way I got the interview was Bobby got a hold of my phone number, and he called me. I was with my brother at a Mike Pence event in Keene, New Hampshire. The local Republicans were having a dinner for Mike Pence, and he was just starting to get the wheels going on his as Trump would say, his total failure of a campaign, Jeff. Just a total disaster. Very low energy.
Low energy.
Yeah, low energy. So he was doing an event up in Keene. So we went to that. We went to the dinner. We met him. I got a picture with him. I asked him about Nord Stream pipeline. He fed me some bullshit, which I knew he would. So I'm driving back. It's dark. I'm on, shitty service, New Hampshire back roads. My phone rings with a number I don't recognize, and I answer it. And it's a stretch of it's 101, one of the most popular roads in New Hampshire. And I instantly recognized the voice.
Right.
And he goes, "Is this Eric?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "It's Bobby Kennedy." And I had to pull the car over. I pulled the car over to the side of the road. And he said, "I got your invite for your podcast. I would love to come on your podcast." And that began pretty much the whole thing for me in the Kennedy campaign. We did the podcast and we stayed in touch. And I had known Dennis Kucinich going back to my college days. I first met Dennis in 2006 when he was running for president. Here in New Hampshire, we got the New Hampshire primary, so we're practically tripping over presidential candidates. And at least. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the Democratic side. Democrats used to actually have primaries, if you can believe it, not that long ago. And, I found out, obviously, I saw Dennis when I set up the podcast with Bobby. And I just told him, I told both him and Bobby, I said, "Hey, man, I'm out of a job right now. And I want to do everything I can to get him elected president." So I got on board the campaign. And the first big thing I worked on was the peace speech at St. Anselm College. I ran point on that and basically got the venue to set everything up at that and worked with St. A's and worked with Dennis and Bobby closely, and DeBecker, the security team. And
right.
that was, to me, I couldn't believe that was happening. I'm like, oh my God, I'm up here on the 60th anniversary of JFK's historic peace speech at American University. And I'm introducing Dennis Kucinich and Bobby Kennedy Jr. to bring that spirit back, bring that message alive of peace and anti-war and détente and negotiating with our adversaries instead of posturing for World War III. So that was like a pinch. That was a really big pinch through moment.
Eric Jackman, you radical.
I know, so radical that we want peace, and we'll talk to the Russians, and we'll work towards, some kind of settlement and some kind of peace. But so yeah, that was kind of the gateway for me into the campaign, and then, officially my title was New Hampshire coordinator here in New Hampshire, and we were still in a posture of a Democratic primary, so we opened a big headquarters here. Did a lot of grassroots field stuff, events. Bobby did a lot of events in New Hampshire early on, and then come October we went independent, and that changed the whole thing. And they had to restructure the campaign, and my position and everyone else in New Hampshire pretty much was no more. So that was my exit from the campaign in late November, but stayed in touch with everybody and was still on board very much, and helped with the efforts in January to get the signatures here. With our state director, Larissa Trexler. She did a wonderful job. She was an amazing woman to work with. So yeah, here we are now, man. And, lay out some of the goals of this PAC. What really are we looking to do with this, Jeff, and how do we accomplish that?
Well, short-term goal is, now, like I said, dead heat, everything we can to get to November 5th, that there are these pockets of supporters who identify with this message in these battleground states. So one is to reach out to them. It's also to target new voters. There is a Kennedy vote out there, and I want to say this from here. Talking about what could have been, in hindsight, being where it is from our situation, I think if we would have stayed in the Democratic primary, I know in Texas we would have taken votes. We would have been strong in Texas, that we might have been walking into at this time in the election, that it might be us versus Mr. Trump or Donald Trump, President Trump up on that stage. And so I think that, we have, and I say this because I really do believe that there is this strong, what is a contingent of people who feel the way we do. Obviously, polling tells we have a large amount of people who consider themselves independents in our country. Our movement, and you've seen this, it hits those independents. The coalition is from the Green Party to libertarians to people who have never voted before. I had the conversation today with one of our folks out in California, Becky Clausen. And I've known Becky for a while. I've talked to her. We've been on the campaign, and I asked her today, I said, Becky, did you vote Democratic or Republican before? And how many campaigns are there in the world, or how much political action do you get involved with where you'll know somebody for 3 or 4 months and work beside them on a political campaign, and you don't know which party they voted for?
It's true.
It seems like our movement is almost beyond tribalism, and it's finding these things that connect us. So to get back to your point, to make a long story short, or a short story long, the idea is to make sure in these battleground states that we help get the numbers of people out to get Mr. President Trump over the hump, and that we also are able to engage. And we saw this in polling data early on in the campaign, that there were some states that Mr. Kennedy played really, really big in, and he had strong constituencies. We believe New Hampshire is a state that could play big in this election. And that, it has all, this election cycle, New Hampshire has all the hallmarks of a state that could flip. We believe Maine has that. Other polling in some states out west has also showed us the same thing, that if we energize the Kennedy movement and the Make America Healthy Again movement, we can take some of these states and we can make them competitive. And I think this does several things for us. One, it's a visual display of how powerful our coalition is. And I think if President Trump wins, Mr. Kennedy is going to need that backing now more than ever to hold legitimacy. And I mean, you know how politics is. Once you get into Washington, I mean, it's a dirty, ugly place. And at the end of the day, what motivates politicians? It's votes. They need money because they buy money with votes, big media, and this and that. But we're a group of people. We're a large constituency. So I almost see the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again movement, almost like the Christian coalitions are. And this is what I would like to see us have this sort of power within the political sphere, where we are able to, and this is going on past November, where we're able to take political messaging around the things, regenerative farming, medical freedom, the problems with chronic disease, and to me, and corporate capture. And I think that's a big one. I think that's a great one because it's really the political thing. And libertarians would probably like, this is, I think, where we get the libertarian argument on the corporate capture. But to be able to take these things or take these platforms and present them in a way politically that we can use them to help get folks elected who align with our thinking, and that we can then use them in a political sense where politicians need to listen to us because we have such political strength that we can swing elections. And I mean, that's really the place where we see it being. And I think we can do a lot of good in the political world. And the Kennedy campaign, the volunteers who made it up, the supporters who were there are the best of the best. And I don't know. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we're going to do past November, but we're going to have to get past November 1st. And so that's where our focus is on right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I believe that too, that this movement, Bobby really, I think he grabbed lightning in a bottle, really. And it's amazing to get behind someone like him. He, to me, is a once in a lifetime kind of candidate. And it's not over. It's not over yet, even beyond this election. I really think this is the beginning of something special, because it really, really is a coalition of like Ron Paul anti-war people,
yep,
health freedom people, like in the Del Bigtree world, people who were kind of in my background with my brother and I, we were big Kennedy assassination researchers and people who are students of the Cold War, and, you know, really big, to be totally honest, you know, JFK and RFK fanboys,
right,
who want to recapture that.
Prince is one of those too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got that big portrait of JFK behind me. That's from the book. It's from the cover of JFK and the Unspeakable by Jim Douglas, which in my opinion is one of the best examinations of the Kennedy assassination. That's a whole other thing. So you had those kind of people, and then you had dissatisfied liberals who were done with party politics and felt their voices were no longer heard. Their concerns, their blue-collar, everyday working man concerns are being drowned out by that woke bullshit that's infected the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a perfect amalgamation of everyone in those camps. And like you mentioned, COVID, I call COVID the flu world order. It changed so much for so many people who may have not been politically inclined or aware or involved before. And then all of a sudden COVID happens, and people are looking around like, what the hell is this? Bobby Kennedy Jr. Yep. Here he comes talking about Fauci, talking about Gates. He already had plenty of wind in his sails about mandating, what. I got to be careful because we're on YouTube. So this was already a very credible and authoritative voice on these issues. With children's health defense and everything else that he'd been doing for years. So I think for a lot of people, they didn't know who to turn to or where to go. They were so concerned about this, and I think a lot of people didn't believe something like that could ever happen in America.
Except for the medical freedom folks.
Exactly.
When I showed up July 4th and I saw the footage, I saw the pictures of it. I showed up at a July 4th protest to protest Abbott shutting Texas down.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who were there and organized were these medical freedom folks. They were nurses and they were things like this. And I was shocked. And that was the first time I got to see inside this world. And I've been amazed ever since. Like every step into it, it's just been opening up.
Yeah, he's really able to bring together people who have equal passion for being involved and for their issues to come under one big umbrella, which has been really cool. I've met a lot of really cool people through the Kennedy thing, so I'm really grateful for that. And I really believe I really think Trump this time around is intends to keep his word to Bobby. I really do.
Well, two things. First, like Mr. Kennedy, I agree, is like that great standard bearer. He's almost like, Moses. And I don't know, my Bible history is bad, but whoever took over from Moses to go into the promised land, that seems to be Joseph. I don't know. That seems to be like really Nicole Shanahan. Like she is the perfect person to, I think, carry the movement forward. And I don't know if when they were choosing vice presidents, what they were thinking. I have some ideas, but really we struck gold. And I think her as the vice president pick was one of the best things that the campaign did. And I think it was one of the best things that it did for the movement, because she really, for an older generation, baby boomer generation, Mr. Kennedy really is about that departure from like what liberalism has done and how they've rewritten history. And they're trying to redefine America. And they were trying to use the legacy of Kennedy and use the legacy of the Democratic Party to basically, become undemocratic in these things. But Nicole Shanahan, I think she's under 40. She, I think, represents that Gen Z, and she represents that having a child who has, experienced issues with her child. She comes from a place that's different than, say, the Kennedy folk and the older generation.
Mm-hmm.
She really identifies, and she supported the Democratic Party so heavily.
Right.
To be able to make that switch. And I hope she doesn't, if she ever hears that, I hope she's not offended, but like, she's a Ron Paul fangirl.
Yeah.
I love it. She said that we have to, I heard a podcast where she says she has to audit. We need to audit our government and we need to look at spending. So you have somebody who's bringing in about like corporate capture and healing the soil. And then with these things, if we're able to carry this forward and if we're able to move this forward, I think it's going to be something that will be like very successful with her. And you're talking about how Trump will be different this time. 3 words we never heard in the 2016 election. Trump transition team. It did not exist, right?
Right.
I heard, somewhere they talked about Hillary Clinton already had all of these offices filled up, ready to go. And Trump, I don't know why he didn't think he was gonna win. He looked like a shoe-in to me, but like he didn't think he was gonna win, and he didn't have people set into office. When we were in Philadelphia, I met some folks who were on the campaign staff who had been in the Trump administration, and they said it was very chaotic. And I believe it was chaotic because he didn't plan to be in office, and he didn't plan to put people in office. And, this industry, politics or whatever, is rife with like charlatans and grifters.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up, I believe he ended up being the administrative agencies tried to usurp him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was unable to put any of 4,000, which is not, a huge amount, but he wasn't able to embed people into those agencies to push his agendas, to look out for him. So instead of those agencies having territorial wars inside themselves about doing the Trump agenda or not, I think those agencies just turned into complete resistance to whatever Trump wanted to do or whatever he thought was best. And hopefully with Mr. Kennedy leading a transition team, I hope he's reached out to Tulsi Gabbard. My understanding is that he's reached out to libertarians. And Vivek, when he spoke at the Libertarian Party, said this, and I want to take credit for it because I told it to libertarians first. But like I said, a Kennedy White House is a libertarian administration. He said a Trump White House is a libertarian administration. So personally, what I'd like to see him do is to bring these people from the Libertarian Party, some of the thinkers, bring them into government. And I know you know libertarians, and it's time they get off the sidelines and stop complaining and get in government and start doing.
Let's go. I mean, I've heard it Libertarian Party called one of the biggest book clubs in the world.
Yep.
And it's hard to argue that. I mean, Trump showed up and said, look, you can still get your 3%, or you can come join me and actually get your hands dirty,
Yep.
And I've been in and out of libertarian politics going back to really like 2012 with Gary Johnson. And I worked on his campaign when he was still a Republican, and then, supported him when he dropped out and ran 12 and 16 for the LP. That's the vibe I'm getting. And that's what we're hearing. I mean, from Bobby, Bobby just did a podcast where he said Trump did not expect to win. And this is a conversation the two of them had. And that he had these thousands of jobs that he all of a sudden had to fill, and he didn't know who to turn to because he really wasn't a Washington guy. So, you'll hear Bobby say Trump got rolled by a lot of these people, and he really did. And that's how he ended up with like a John Bolton in there, with a Nikki Haley, with Mike Pompeo, with Elliot Abrams, with just the worst of the worst kind of neocons.
Because they were who were available, and they showed up and held up their hand. And
they were who were there, and they know that game. They've been playing that game for a long, long time. And, Trump made that point. Look, I had only been to Washington like 17 times before I became president, Jeff, okay? And he's not a Washington guy, man. He can't. He realized he couldn't fill the thing with contestants from The Apprentice. Although Omarosa did get a brief posting, which was outrageous.
You got to do that. You tried.
But I feel really good knowing that Bobby and Tulsi are right there in the mix, and they're advising Trump, and they're on the transition team already, and it's already being talked about. And those are two people, man, who have a deep bench of people in their network who are competent, who are smart, who are intellectual, who are experienced, that can get in there in January and hit the ground running to help enact the agenda that we want to see. Yep. The true America First agenda, where we secure the border, we fix the public health crisis, we sort out that Ukraine-Russia bullshit, we get the economy back on track, we get inflation under control, and we really just get back to having a country that's on track for success. I mean, the dollar, man, the dollar doesn't go far at all anymore, man. And I remember only a few years ago when Trump was in there, you can feel that difference for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I go to the grocery store. I mean, Everybody has this experience, and you're just like, gee, that's kind of expensive all of a sudden. And you have inflation and shrinkflation, and you have the whole combination. And then it's products. Like from what I understand, chocolate isn't chocolate. And in Europe, they can't call it chocolate. They have to call it a chocolate flavored. Okay. So that that inflation and that rise in prices, the rise in gasoline, the rise in everything, it's sort of affecting our pocketbooks, affecting what we put in our systems. It's affecting everything. I really think, I don't know if you know Lynn, if you met Lynn Redwood when she was on I
was on some calls with Lynn. Yeah.
So she was the children's, what was the program? The
Children's Health Defense.
Yeah. I always get, there's some, Children's Health Defense. She was one of the players in this, and she takes credit for, causing Mr. Kennedy to be called an anti-vaxxer, because she was the one who was like bringing this these studies about aluminum in the vaccines. But I mean, she has been studying this for years. Her and this whole network have been looking at the FDA. They've been looking at what's going on. They're not political people. A lot of them are academic people. They're probably Democrats. Maybe a lot of them didn't vote. But he has this whole network to tap just under HHS. And I really think that if we do nothing else in this next election, but like we start making major changes in HHS, like our country is going to be better off for it. I mean, of course, like I agree with you on the war thing. Like we don't need World War III, and Biden seems hell bent on it. Harris, that the neocons who are aligning with her for some reason seem hell bent on it.
As Tulsi said, and I'm screaming about this. Dick Cheney endorsing Kamala and them embracing him with open arms is all you need to know about those people. This is Mr. 9/11. This is Mr. Iraq War. This is Mr. Project for New American Century, where America needs full spectrum dominance over the Middle East and the whole entire world. The whole planet's a battlefield. Everyone's an enemy, and we need trillions and trillions to fight this global war on terror, and there's no end date. Meanwhile, we got people sleeping under bridges here in America.
Corporate capture.
We got corporate capture.
Right.
And this is an area where I think libertarians, where I kind of fallen out a little bit with them, where actually good government is possible with good people. Because government and policy it's people. It's just people. And when you put cinder blocks into that revolving door of industry into agencies which are supposed to regulate and be the oversight and the watchdog of that industry, you can actually turn things around and change things. We don't have to stack all these agencies with people who will be in there for a couple of years and will create an environment or continue to create the environment where private industry can thrive and can engage in self-dealing. And then when that guy gets out of being head of the FDA, he goes and joins Pfizer's board and gets $100 million.
You know, and
putting an end to that.
And the whole ploy is it starts with the taxpayer, or it takes with the citizen in two ways. That person either pays taxes now, or that person is a unit by which they're borrowed money upon, like in future people. And that seems what the whole system is about, that we have corporations who create policy that cause taxation or borrowing of debt to fund social programs that enrich themselves. And I think of the same as like the SNAP program. You know, I understand why we need to make sure that that we have good food and it's available, but where do a lot of these SNAP dollars go to? It's basically they're borrowed money. They're from taxpayers. They go into the SNAP program. Who are the companies that benefit from it? Big Ag, ConAg, these companies that sell boxed foods in grocery stores. And then, so what does that happen? So we have people who use these SNAP. They go into these food deserts, buy this bad food, and they get sick. And then we have to spend more tax dollars or borrow more money from our grandchildren to pay for them. But because the industry is geared towards that type of SNAP food and at Big Ag and Big Con, all the rest of us are caught up into it too. And it's just that this idea that corporations, the average citizen in America is not sovereign anymore. This is not the way. I believe that, you look back at Western civilization, it's about Christianity, it started out as Christianity, a direct link between you and God, and about the sovereign citizen. But right now we're really, in a sense, we are slaves to corporations, and they're just trying to squeeze money. And it's, I mean, we're borrowing our great grandkids off our great grandkids right now.
I'm with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter admitted we're an oligarchy. It's basically a oligarchical corporate. America is like a corporation. It's a series of a few corporations that have monetized everything and taken control of every apparatus and lever of government and control. And it takes someone like a Kennedy and people in his ilk who understand the way it works, I mean, you know, I remind people about this, that RFK Jr., he was born right into that world, man. He was born into such a high level, connected, powerful family that you sometimes forget um, what he's packed into his 70 years, the amazing things that he's been able to experience, the people he's met, the network he has, the influential and powerful people that he got to know by the time he was, you know, a young boy. It all, you hear that when you hear him speak about things. He has such a breadth of knowledge on so many different things that he can speak to, which so many people that we have down there in Washington, they're not down there to do that. They're not down there to try and bring about real change and to try and do the right thing and use their knowledge and their power and influence for actual good. So that's what's so impressive about him. And I really hope that it's rubbing off on Trump, because I've even said this to Bobby. I really feel like Trump has always admired the Kennedys.
Yep.
And part of him he always wanted to be a Kennedy. Yep. He wanted that political legitimacy. He came from a powerful, well-connected Northeast family, just like the Kennedys. And he really sought that for himself. So that's why, you know, I really feel the two of them working together is something so unique and so special. And we need to be all hands on deck and take full advantage of this historic moment.
What did you know that phone conversation that got leaked between Mr. Kennedy and President Trump? I thought just the way President Trump spoke to Bobby was so like authentic. It's not like he told him about like he told him about the shooting, but he wasn't like he just kind of it seemed very a sincere conversation where he was trying to talk to somebody, and it happened so soon after it too. I mean, that was one of his first calls. So I do really think there's a lot of synergy, and I noticed it too. A lot of our folks, and they said 60% of Kennedy voters would vote for Trump if Kennedy dropped out. And I do believe that's true. There are that amount. So there's a lot of us who already support Trump. And I think there's a lot of us who in our group, in our community, who they're smart enough individuals and they understand what's at stake. And if Mr. Kennedy can sit down and talk with Trump, and he's going to be like, all right, this is a good guy, we can trust him. I mean, he's negotiated with people, he's met people, and he's not he's not like a political opportunist. I mean, he has no need to be. And I'm sure this couldn't have been an easy decision for him. So I knowing the individual, not like that well personally, but knowing him, right. And if it were me, I mean, I wouldn't make a deal. I wouldn't make an agreement like that until it was until I knew for certain that it was a good deal and I could trust this person. So I don't know.
Right. No, it's putting it all on the line, man. And he knew what the fallout would be. I mean, hell, he knew what the fallout would be running for president the way he did with his family and the attacks from the media. They loved Bobby until they didn't. They had him on the cover of every magazine you could think of, environmental hero, Kennedy heir apparent to the Kennedy legacy, next president. They loved him when they felt that he was on their team. But then when he started questioning their, sacred cows, going to war with pharma,
yes.
speaking truths about the war machine, speaking truths about his uncle and his father's assassinations. That's another thing. Even when I started my podcast in 2015, that was kind of when Bobby first started publicly airing his doubts about both of those assassinations. And my brother and I were like, because we've been researching all the big assassinations of the 60s and the Cold War for over 20 years. And to finally see one of the main members of the Kennedy family, of Bobby's generation, coming out and speaking publicly about that was amazing. It was fascinating, and it was inspiring, and it just it gave me hope. It gave me hope that there are actual people who are in that class who do care and who do value the truth. So to me, that really showed me he was something different from the elite power class.
So did you ever read the book Crossfire by Jim Marrs?
I'm familiar with it. I know that it was partly used by Oliver Stone for the movie JFK, and I'm familiar with Jim Mars's work, and I'm familiar with the book. I have not read it, but I'm familiar with it.
Because earlier we were talking about like what happened to the like where things went off, and Jim Marrs has this great book called the Fourth Reich, and the basic premise is that America won Germany lost the Second War, but sort of Nazi ideology won, and it transferred over into America,
Into NASA,
into Operation Paperclip, and these things. But he describes it into that he talks about the natural way of to deal with psychology and these things beforehand was they saw it as a Jewish thing because it was Freud. So they came up with alternatives, and their alternatives was crystal meth and speed. And now we see like a population of children who grew up on Ritalin, who grew up in Adderall, so that these sort of this, and I guess what I'm trying to get to is we talked about, and what that was really what Nazism really came down to was the collaboration between government and business, and to push profits for business. And that's how Hitler was able to win over the business class. He was able to.
That's what the definition of fascism is, that marriage between the corporate world and the government.
Have you been on a podcast or heard this lady? I don't know. She's called Dr. Kat, but she is a. I was on an X Space with her last night, and she's grew up in Croatia, and we were talking about how what happens in the future, and she said you have to understand that the republic is no longer. And when COVID happened, and when they locked us down and they locked us out of our churches and they locked us out of our businesses and this things, it was really the end of democracy. It was the end of our republic, and it was the end of our civil rights and these things. And if they could do it then, we can do it now. And I sort of think that this, within this populism during COVID, populism was already happening. And you had a lot of people who were associated with Donald Trump, who were standing up against the narrative, I guess I should say, or who questioned the narrative. Mm-hmm. And you had a lot of people who came from that left side, who started questioning the narrative then, and that these groups colliding together, MAHA and MAGA, like, is really a powerful force. I think now we're looking at definitely populism versus the establishment and authoritarianism. And so I'm an old Democrat, right? I mean, I worked South Florida on the Obama campaign in 2008, 2012. I canvassed. I got my teeth cut in that. But we hated Bush, and we hated Cheney. Mm-hmm. And literally, I think you can say that Bush was still today one of the worst presidents ever. But for that party to go for him, calling this guy a war criminal, questioning the legitimacy of his election,
right,
and now all of a sudden accepting him within like the fold as this is a demonstration of why you should vote for us. It's just disgusting, and it really is like Orwellian. We've always been at war with East Asia, or however it goes, but it is sort of that. And what I think that Mr. Kennedy and Nicole Shanahan, and you see it on the libertarian side, and I think you see it on the green side too. You see this movement are really a populist movement of people fighting back against this. And on this note, I think what Mr. Kennedy did was, if we're able to help get Donald Trump elected, and I think what Mr. Kennedy did will be seen as one of the greatest statesman moves this century. It was There's nobody's ever been in this position where he's a candidate and all of a sudden he can turn his and help out another candidate. And it's something it's just not, it hasn't been done in American politics yet at this level. It's been done in primaries.
Right.
But you've never seen this one candidate saying like that group is worse than us two. It's coalition building in America.
And it's coalition building. And
Jill
it
Stein
is.
did the same.
Jill Stein did what?
Dr. Stein, and this is Dr. Stein should go to her people and she should say, listen, the Democratic Party is bad. Look what they've done to us. Look what they've done to me. If we don't make a stand ourselves, and if the Democrats win, this is just going to get worse. And I really think that if I were advising Dr. Stein, I would tell her to do exactly what Mr. Kennedy did.
Yeah, I mean,
endorse.
The problem, absolutely, and there is some synergy there with Greens and MAGA and MAHA, but the problem is they're so fixated on the Israel-Palestine issue. And that's just like a red line for so many people. And I know you heard it all too, Jeff. I hear it all the time about Israel and Palestine, and I don't agree with Bobby on it. And I've told him that. We've had conversations about it, and we can be respectful of each other. But this election is so important, and there's just so many other issues where we are in 100% alignment, where we can actually do something. That politics is compromise, man. That sucks. That's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. But the longer I've been playing this game, the more I've realized that's how it goes.
And it's about our people. You know, I understand. And
yeah.
I personally think I agree with you 100% about the Palestinian situation. And I think there is a group of within, you know, the liberty movement who they can't understand how somebody can be against the Ukrainian war, but for what's happening in Palestine. It's the same thing. You know, it's war, it's people getting killed. It's tragic that we should end it. And I know these things are important, but what this election is about us as an Americans and about our children. And if we can't first take care of ourselves and our children, we certainly can't do anything with Israel or with Palestine. And with Mr. Kennedy coming in, the idea is to end the forever wars, right? Scale back on the militarization. And if we do that, naturally, there's going to be a greater degree of peace in the Middle East. And at the end of the day, they're going to have to work out their own problems themselves.
Well, yeah, and there has to be a little more even-handedness to that conflict. I mean, certainly it's so one-sided. I mean, one side has nukes. Israel has nuclear weapons you're not even supposed to talk about or acknowledge, and we give them all the billions and billions. And yeah, we could do a whole other episode about that, and I'm happy to talk about it. But my views haven't changed. But the big picture, you're right. This is about the United States of America. This is about securing our border. This is about stopping the bleeding with our economy and just righting the ship, man. We're on a course for fucking disaster if we keep going the way we're going.
And we're gonna catch the bad side of it. I don't know how you're old. I'm 50. I'm 51. I'm gonna catch the end of it when it's gonna be really bad. I have a 20-year-old son and I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I'm worried that it's gonna be it's gonna be brutal for them. You know, the debt burden is going to be so great placed upon them, the environmental degradation, the food, actually, and then what they are allowed to do and what they aren't to do. I mean, I think sometimes when people talk about the importance of this election and what it means, they talk about it in these grandiose ways, and it almost seems sometimes like they're being hyperbolic. But at the end of the day, there's nothing hyperbolic about these political decisions that are being made all around us right now. I mean, we're in the throes of whatever it is you want to describe it. And on a federal level, you know, we can talk about what we need to do on local levels, but on a national level, when it comes to the president of the United States and the presidential race, it's really a clear-cut choice. And I mean, for me, I don't see any other way that we need to
Yeah.
get President Trump reelected.
Yeah.
And he's got a great partner in Bobby Kennedy.
He has a great coalition partner, and he understands and respects Bobby's intellect and his acumen and his knowledge of the world, and that he is a well-traveled man who has done so much in his 70 years and knows so much and knows so many people. And that's a real asset that Trump did not have in 16, and he didn't have in 20.
Yes.
And I also think that Bobby can help Trump appeal to people who are not rigid or hardcore one way or the other. You know, your independents and your moderates who just have felt the squeeze of the last 3.5 years. And maybe they don't love Trump. They don't love some of the things he says. But they do like that cost of living could go down. They do like that the market could stabilize. They'd like to see their retirement.
For the most time, they've been apolitical. They may not have voted a lot in the past. They may have not come out. They've been apolitical, but like and I think a lot of our supporters, I don't know what you experienced up in New Hampshire, was people who were like apolitical and who really hadn't been engaged in politics, but were like, this is our time. So exactly to reiterate what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And the pundit class all said that Trump was awful in that debate and he lost. I still came away feeling like that's the guy that I want to deal with thugs around the world, like he did for the 4 years that he was in there. I feel confident in Donald Trump when he goes and deals with autocrats like Putin, and he deals with Rocket Man, and he deals with China, because they know that guy's a mofo. That guy is a tough as nails son of a bitch. And things, I just feel there was more order to the world when Trump was in there, man. And he's such a wild card, and he's in so many ways so outside of that system, that structure that has been in place since the end of World War II, that they didn't really know how to handle. They didn't know how to deal with him. And I like that about him. I like that on one end, he's ratcheting up this rhetoric about North Korea and fire and fury. And then a few weeks later, he's walking the DMZ with the guy, and pressure's coming down. North and South Korea are talking again. Now, of course, nothing's settled there, but he opened the door. He opened the door to peace, and he showed another path, a different path. And that was one of the things I really supported him on, was a lot of his foreign policy in the 4 years that he was president, and him wanting to get us out of Syria, to not commit to that, to not get bogged down in another regime change war, because he knew the lessons of Iraq. So those impulses are there with Trump. Now, yeah, he dropped a lot of bombs, man, and he kind of, in some ways, maintained the status quo of the war machine, because, like with everything else, he got down there, man, and he realized that is an embedded knot down there in that place. They have their tentacles in everything. And Chuck Schumer went on whatever show it was and said, Trump better watch himself. The CIA and the intelligence agencies have 3 ways from Sunday to get at you. And Trump found that out. He learned that, man. I mean, he had his own people battling him when he wanted to get us out of Syria and pull out of Syria. You have some people ignoring orders.
The generals having conversations with the Chinese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, was that Milley?
Yeah. I mean, this is even if you're a Democrat, or if you're a Republican, or wherever you are on the political spectrum, this should really bother you, that you have this elected person who is supposed to express the will of the people, and that you have bureaucratic government who is stopping them and preventing them from doing this because they have a will for your own. We should do another topic, because I have a lot of thoughts on like voting laws. I'm really kind of against term limits, because it seems to me that if you have term limits, what you have is you already have a government run by the bureaucracy. But if you have term limits, it's even more, because unless you have term limits for government workers, that's the only way I could imagine that you could have it.
Yeah, or placing a restriction on your ability to work inside and outside of government, and then also work in the industry, that you're supposed to regulate, or lobbyists, like a ban on lobbying. Trump talked about a lot of that. I mean, a lot of that was kind of nebulous for him And that's where I feel Bobby can be of a lot of help. It can actually turn the thing into concrete and put some teeth behind it and put some punch behind it.
I wish he would get some of we talked about these libertarians. I would love some of the libertarian economists to come over to the campaign too. And I would love to see more of a sort of a Austrian, thank you, Austrian sort of look at economics, which basically I think the Austrians stole it from like the early American Southern economic philosophy of no government intervention in the economy and this and that. So, I mean, that's an American, but like we get back to the basics of what made America healthy. Again.
Well, I think certainly a place to start would be auditing the Federal Reserve. I mean, a lot of us would just like get rid of them, but you have to start somewhere with that. And to give Ron Paul and even Bernie Sanders credit, they both had audit the Fed bills. Bernie introduced it on the Senate side, and Ron Paul had it on the House side. And that's just like where you start. Let's break open the books and try and audit the damn thing. It's a private banking cartel that has run amok for 1913. So 110 some odd years, and most people don't even really know much about it. And that's one big thing. A sleeping giant Ron Paul awoke in this country was just awareness of what the hell the Federal Reserve is.
I want to say Ron Paul was my state rep.
Oh, Lake Jackson in Texas.
So my parents, I grew up a couple years in high school. My parents moved back there after Singapore, but they lived there. So during the years that Ron Paul was in office, it was like I'm happy to say he was my state rep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but he was the one who kind of brought that to us. And it's these sort of, and there are a lot of these things that on the left and the right, we all agree on that we need to.
We have synergy.
Yep. I don't think anybody from the left would stand up and say we should trust corporations running our bank and audit the Fed.
No, yeah, maybe the way we arrive at it is a little different, but we arrive at the same place. It's like Dennis Kucinich and Ron Paul, man, those guys led the opposition to the Iraq War in the House in the build-up to the Iraq War. Those were like the stalwarts on the left and the right leading the opposition. And on the big picture issues like that, we're all pretty much in agreement. So this is where I feel Trump and the MAGA people who have been so dug in can listen to some other voices and consider these things. And I don't think they're huge political concessions that Trump has to give up. And it was very encouraging when Bobby endorsed him there in Arizona at the rally, some of the things that Trump said that you didn't really ever hear him talk about before. So that's what our opportunity is here. And that's why I want to, help this PAC raise awareness and, let's raise some money and let's get out there and let's get people motivated. Just have conversations with your neighbors at the grocery store. People say you don't talk religion and politics. No, talk religion and politics.
Yes, I
do
agree.
Do it respectfully. Do it respectfully, but do it because we still have a First Amendment in this country.
Yeah, and the idea of, I think there's this. People want you to be leery about talking about politics. They want you to be leery about talking religion. If anything, we need to learn how to talk about these things in a dialogue where we can disagree but come to conclusions and move forward. And people just in their echo chambers all the time. And I'll give you. So I live in Aransas County is 80% Republican. There was a post going around on Nextdoor, and it was about who won the debate. And the Democrats in my community were just on points in their own little debate. They were crushing it. And there were Republicans who were saying like, we need to just stop this. It's gone on enough. But I was like, no, you should be happy that they're having this discussion with you. So many times they don't want to have it. Let's talk about things. I'm into local politics. I've run about 14 elections in the last 5 or 6 years locally, nonpartisan races and local races. And I work on tax initiatives. So I work with a lot of the Democrats because they're the party not in power. And so we can disagree about things so easily. And we just move on to the things that are important. And that's something we need to learn how to do. And maybe on a national level, you do need these parties because people need these easily recognized platforms. and I can give it, and I can give you, and I can understand some reason. But as you break down onto a lower, smaller level, we really need to understand that we're all Americans. We're all. I'm from Texas, so I say we're all Texans, and we all are. We're all working for the benefit of our kids, and we're all working for the benefits of our own health and our own freedom. And nobody likes to be overtaxed. Nobody likes to have their rights stripped away. So let's just find those things that unite us, and they are there. But one thing about this pact, to kind of get back to it, is I really think that you need to have, we need to be able to learn how to have political dialogues about this. And what you said, I want to take it kind of back to this. For so long, we've been told not to talk about politics. We don't know how to talk to each other. And we need to get back into it.
Yeah, it's turned into a nasty food fight, and there's no need for that. There's no need for us to behave like children like that. And it's okay to hear something you don't agree with. Your head's not going to fall off. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And, unfortunately, it's really like the left, man, that has the hardest time with having a nuanced civil conversation. Just what have I've experienced as of late. And like you mentioned, you were an old school Democrat. I was too. My gateway into politics was John Kerry's 2004 campaign. I was all psyched for it. He was not Bush. He was going to end the Iraq War. And then I found out they're both skull and bones, and they're like 13 cousins. But
did you get on the campaign when he went to New Hampshire?
Yeah, so that was the first campaign I volunteered for it, and my brother and I got John Kerry to helicopter into our high school the day before the New Hampshire primary in 2004 and speak at our high school, and it was a huge event. There was national media there.
Oh
we got to stand behind him on stage, and then we got to ask him a question on camera off to the side afterwards, and use it for. We had like a public access style kind of like show and through the school, and that was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I get to meet face to face with a powerful U.S. senator. This guy could be the next president. So I was like, I'm a Democrat. Yeah, I'm a Democrat. And that was my senior year, the first vote I could ever vote. I voted for Kerry, and I was so sad that he lost.
You weren't so interested in Howard Dean?
No, I wasn't.
Man,
Dean was
to scream at that point, and it was over.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dean, I liked his anti-war bona fides, but I just felt like Kerry had the best shot to beat Bush. So, and I'm originally from Massachusetts, so I still was clinging on to this Massachusetts liberal thing, which of course feeds into why I love the Kennedys.
Talking about somebody who wanted to be a Kennedy.
I mean, John Forbes Kerry. My initials are JFK.
Yep.
And I was wounded thrice. I got 3 Purple Hearts, Jeff.
John Kerry reporting for duty.
I'm John Kerry, and I'm reporting for duty. And then he had John Edwards as his VP. I'm John Edwards.
I think one of Karl Rove's do not like the man, from Texas, don't like his style of politics, but one of the best presidential campaigns that he ran was that with a flip-flop.
Mm-hmm.
And the one where they dressed up in the hunting outfits for Halloween. And then the Swift boat. I mean, we're getting off topic, but the Swift
boat veterans for truth. Yeah.
And they really there was a lot of what I thought about kind of democratic swift boating of RFK Jr.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we had that done to our guy this time around.
Yep.
But yeah, so I mean, going back to like having conversations and nuance and being able to talk to people you don't agree with, it didn't used to be. It wasn't this bad. That was 20 years ago. It was the first campaign I was ever really part of. And then really I got to college. When you get to college, you're supposed to get more liberal. That's when I discovered Ron Paul and libertarianism.
Wow.
So that changed my worldview and kind of changed the path that I went down and how I view a lot of things. But we really do, Jeff. We need to be able to talk to each other. We need to not be afraid to ask hard questions of each other and engage in a dialogue, because that's really what's going to keep this American experiment going. It's
and these things that we've been arguing about, okay, for instance, like abortion. Like if I would be a big pro-lifer and you would be a big pro-choice person, like on our level of dealing with each other, it's a difference. We shouldn't hate each other for thinking differently on it.
Right.
Same with like the Second Amendment. If I think there needs to be radical gun control, you don't think there needs to be radical gun control. These are not issues that are that really important at the end of the day to us as people. I mean, it impacts our lives. But we get caught up in fighting these make believe. And I think one of the reasons that they're so pronounced, at least in political, I love what Donald Trump did by kicking it down to the states. I think that really changed the argument a lot. But I think what happens is they're so simple and they're so narrow that it's created just this real easy way for people to lob bombs back and forth at each other. And we get caught up in hating each other over the things that don't affect us and our children that much. And we miss out on the things that are important, like our food sources being destroyed, what we're putting in our body, the way that the pharmaceutical companies are controlling our medical system. My mother is coming. She was MAGA. So, but she is really, they've always really been more make America healthy again. And I really love it. I actually talked to, you know this, where the saying came from, don't you? It's a book by this lady named Dr. Sapphire. And she wrote a book in 2020, just brilliant. And I spoke to her today. I called her up and I said, hey, we have the Make America Healthy Again PAC. And I told her about it because I just wanted her to know about us, because she had coined the phrase and it's her phrase. And I wanted to ensure her that we were only going to take it and build on it. But I love that word healthy, because it's one thing about greatness. And, you can either be great, it's greatness. And that's sort of the idea of what greatness is can really be argued. And I think they argue like, what do you want? You might make it great like it was back in 1840. Is that what you're talking about? Said, but no, but like make America healthy. Healthy is very easy to define. It's a medical term. It has a very, when your bank account is healthy, you have more money than you have coming in than you have going out. When your soil is healthy, it's growing and producing crops. When you have a medical system that's healthy, your people are healthy. So it's such a good word. And I think it's really something that not about, the MAGA people can rally around us too. If I were the, and I understand why Cheney and those folks left. I mean, populism has come to the Republican Party. I think Trump has changed it. You still have some old hardcore, what I would say, old country club Republicans left, who are really the Dick Cheney type, but they secretly love Donald Trump, so they stay on a local level. Yeah. But once those group of Republicans die out, and that's the baby boomers. And I would like to say something about Nicole Shanahan. She talks bad about Gen X sometimes, and I'm a little bit offended by that. But anyway, that Republican Party, she talks about Gen Z and the millennial, but she clumps me with the baby boomers.
Well, you're how old are you, Jeff? 50?
51.
So you're Gen X?
I'm Gen
X. Yeah, because Nicole and I are millennials. I'm looking here. Nicole is going to be 39 on September 26th. So I'm going to be 38 in October. So she's only a year older than me. So we're like elder millennials.
I know. And she was clumping me with the
boomers. Ooh, that's an insult.
And I have not gotten any of the I haven't gotten any of the benefits of being a boomer.
Oh my God.
We got student debt. So we got
they own it. The boomers own everything, Jeff. Yeah. They own everything. They got so much. They have so many houses and lake houses and wealth and retirement and multiple cars. And I just want to get a house. Can I just get a house? I want one house. I don't need two.
And I'm afraid what is happening is that because they were such a large group of people and catered to so long, that they're insisting on, and I mean, this is like off the campaign. I mean, this is just you and I talking.
Yeah.
They're an insistence on like Social Security. And I understand why Social Security is important, but I'm 51 and I don't believe it's going to be around. But there's got to be something done, and I've already accepted that I'm going to have to suffer the consequences so my children won't grow up burdened by this. But like there's these major changes that we need to make to America, and I think a lot of this idea of, you know, when you look at the world, you look at, we're entering these things where a lot of things are changing. The American educational system has been set for 130, 140 years. The medical, the Social Security system has been set for these times. If you look back over history, you really don't see programs and institutions lasting for this amount of years unchanged. And I think what's happened to keep the system rolling, it's become tighter and tighter. I lived for 3 years in Romania, and in 60s, Romania was the best place to live. They had great folk music, a band by the name of Phoenix, and it was cool, and they had money. 1976, 77, they had an earthquake in Bucharest. Ceausescu saw what happened. A year or so later, he went to North Korea, and he was like, this is the greatest place ever. We need to make our remake it like North Korea. So they borrowed a lot of money. They had a lot of these huge infrastructure programs. They went broke. By the end of when the dictatorship fell, you had an hour worth of TV a day. You had 15 minutes of cartoons, and you had 45 minutes of like what Ceausescu was doing. So as the system starts to degrade, or however you want to say, it stops functioning. I think we're really at this time period. And I am thankful that we have Mr. Kennedy here and Mr. Trump too, like being kind of President Trump, being representatives of this, an older generation who seem to be okay with these changes that are happening and have the acumen to be like, let's make this happen.
They understand it and they see it, and they know the challenges. Well, we're over the hour here, Jeff, so I guess we can wrap up here. And any last thoughts you have? Everyone listening, yeah, exactly. Get out and vote. It's maha.vote, MAHA.vote, and we urge you to share it with your friends. Sign up. You can enter your email address. If you got some money to donate, you're looking for a great cause and something that will be put towards a worthwhile endeavor, I implore people to donate.
And we're pros. Like we come out, we're professionals at what we do. Given the opportunity, the more resources we get, the better we're able to do our job. We'll be able to turn out the vote, and we'll be able to accomplish these goals. Yeah. Thanks, Eric, man. It's been cool. I really been looking forward to coming on your show, and we overlap in the people who I think where we come from really overlap a lot. And the people in our community need to really understand what we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish it. So, I mean, I really appreciate you. I'm really glad you came on board. I loved it when, Prince and I called you up and you're like, I'm on board. And like, that's what we're talking about. It's like, it's almost like young guns, like regulators mount up. Like, we got an election to win. Let's get this done.
Absolutely. Well, of course, Jeff, I'm glad you came on. I'm happy to have you on, and I'm glad to be on board with the PAC. And everybody, it's okay to vote for Donald Trump. I'm telling all you Kennedy people, come on over. The water's warm. Yeah, I've gotten some shit from my some liberal family from Massachusetts, but I suspect I'll still be sent a Christmas card during the holidays, Jeff. I think I still will be. Maybe we'll still be invited to the holidays.
It's because you're so charming. Why would they not invite you, see?
Well, not only that, Jeff, I'll show up with some Trump wine from the winery, okay? My son Eric is running it. Excuse me. Quite frankly, he's doing a great job, okay? He's doing a great job.
Do you have any Trump wine, by the way?
I have. I don't have. I have. I've been to the Trump winery. Actually, I've been to the Trump winery in Charlottesville with my friend. We went there for a day, and it was just one of the greatest days ever. Place was awesome. The wine is actually good.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. So that will be a great thing if we win again. The inauguration will be all kinds of great wine, Jeff, for everybody. Okay.
So as we close, just one last thing, if you let me do it, I'd like to say,
Of course,
because we have a lot of mutual friends who watch this. There's been a lot of supporters who have come on the campaign trail, and we worked together, and we really had this idea of what we could accomplish, and we really had big dreams, and I think that we can still accomplish those dreams. And for all of those people who came on the campaign and worked so hard, I so much appreciate your work. I've never worked on a volunteer team like we had on the Kennedy team. I felt like I was walking amongst giants from the folks. So I want to make sure y'all know that it's okay to vote for Trump. And that this is not about, it's not about November 5th. It's about November 5th, and it's about what we do with it afterwards. So let's stay in this fight, and let's get this done, and let's continue on where we're going. Don't let this go to waste, what we started.
absolutely. Very well said, Jeff. So, like I said, the water's warm, guys. Send me a message. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to know how to get involved, and it's maha.vote. And everybody listening, I thank you for tuning into another episode of Jackman Radio. Hit that subscribe button, and I'm on all social media platforms. And if you want to support the podcast, we are independent. We don't have any money from Russia. We don't have any money from China. It's all viewer powered. So patreon.com/Jackman Radio. Or if you're on Venmo and want to send some gratuity, my Venmo handle is Senator Jackman 86. And I thank you all for tuning in, and we will be back again with more Jackman Radio. So hang out with me, Jeff, and everybody. That was Jeff Hutt, former National Field Director for Kennedy 24, and now spokesman for the new MAHA PAC. And we will be hearing from him and more people again very soon. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.